Okay, let's jump right in. Picture this. Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
He's standing there, face to face with this box.
Right.
And it's making music out of thin air. No strings, no keys, just hands moving.
It must have been completely baffling.
Totally. And that happened with Léon Theremin and his invention. You just got to wonder what Lenin was thinking. It really, it sets the scene perfectly for the absolutely wild life we're diving into today.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about that moment, it's not just the tech, the novelty of it all, it's the gap it bridged, You've got this revolutionary leader totally focused on rebuilding society, and then, bam, this thing that seems like science fiction, almost magic.
Yeah, exactly.
It really says a lot about Theremin, his sheer nerve, maybe, and how these totally different worlds, politics, avant-garde invention can just collide.
It wasn't just a gadget.
No, it was like a symbol of some kind of possible future, maybe.
Exactly. So today, we're really getting into the incredible story of Léon Theremin. The inventor, obviously, with the Theremin. His life was just this whirlwind. Art, innovation, espionage, seriously, and all this personal drama set against, the chaos of the 20th century.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're leaning on a biographical account of his life, trying to piece together the key moments, the complexities of the man himself.
And if you think about the bigger picture here, Theremin's life is such a powerful case study. It shows how creativity, how technology can shape history, but also how history shapes them.
Absolutely.
So our goal really is to unpack the most important bits of his journey. We want to look at his inventions, and that Theremin was groundbreaking. I mean, creating sound with radio waves and hand movements, totally new.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to explore the crazy circumstances he lived through and the legacy he left. By the end, hopefully you'll have a much clearer picture of this really remarkable guy and, the forces that shaped his incredible life.
All right, so let's start where it all began. The invention. The Theremin. Born in revolutionary Russia.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just some quirky one-off. It was actually the first mass-produced electronic instrument. That's pretty major right from the start.
It really is. And, going back to that idea of music from empty space.
Yeah.
In a time of huge social upheaval, maybe that whole concept felt like, I don't know, breaking old rules, creating new realities, both exciting and maybe a bit scary for some people.
Like he was making the revolution audible or something.
Kind of, yeah, like manifesting the spirit of the age through sound.
Okay, but even though it was so revolutionary,
yeah,
the Theremin didn't exactly take off immediately, did it? It hit some snags.
That's right. Just being innovative isn't enough sometimes. The biography makes it pretty clear it was incredibly hard to play well.
Right, not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all. And then think about the timing. Late 1920s.
Oh, yeah, the crash.
Exactly. The Wall Street crash just decimated everything. Probably wasn't the best market for a weird, expensive new instrument.
Bad timing. And adding to that, it seems like even when RCA started making them in America, Theremin himself didn't really see much of the profit.
No, it sounds like most of it went back to the Soviet state.
Which must have been, pretty frustrating for him, you'd think.
It definitely shows that tricky relationship between an inventor and state control, especially in the Soviet system back then. The government might support you initially, but they controlled the money, the production.
Yeah. Limiting his gain, maybe even limiting the instrument itself.
Could be. It likely hampered how far it could spread, how much it could develop early on.
Okay, so despite those early bumps, Theremin heads over the Atlantic to America. And this chapter involves some pretty big names.
Oh, yeah. We're talking Albert Einstein.
Wow.
And Clara Rockmore, the absolute virtuoso of the Theremin.
Right. What's amazing is how he connected with these people. Like Einstein. You imagine them just geeking out over the science behind the music?
Maybe. It suggests this meeting of brilliant minds, different fields. And his work with Clara Rockmore, that was huge. She basically proved that Theremin could be a serious concert instrument.
Took it beyond just being a novelty act.
Exactly. She showed its expressive power.
But he wasn't just focused on the Theremin, was he? His mind was always buzzing with other ideas.
Oh, constantly. The biography really paints him as relentlessly inventive. He wasn't just music. He was exploring sound and movement in all sorts of ways.
Like what?
Well, things like early alarm systems, even electric door openers. It shows how broad his thinking was, applying his knowledge to totally different areas.
Okay, and this is where the story gets, almost like a spy movie.
Right.
Because while he's doing all this inventing and meeting famous people in the U.S., there's this whole other thing happening underneath, industrial espionage for the Soviets.
Yeah, and this really makes you wonder about his motives, the pressures he was under. I mean, being an artist and inventor, it's the perfect cover, isn't it?
Totally.
The sources suggest his companies weren't just about selling gadgets in America. They were fronts, gathering tech intel for Moscow.
Wow. It's such a clash, isn't it? Innovation tangled up with Cold War spying.
It really is. It makes you think about what specific tech secrets he might have been after, or how his own inventions could have been twisted for espionage. Very different from just making music.
You have to wonder how much of that went on, generally.
Probably more than we realize, especially back then. And Theremin, being this respected figure, he was in a unique position, maybe an overlooked channel for Soviet intelligence.
And then there's his personal life, which gets really complicated, too. His marriage in 1938 to Lavinia Williams.
Yes, an African-American ballet dancer.
Which back then was incredibly brave.
Yeah.
Given the racism, the segregation.
Absolutely. You have to admire their courage, maybe their hopefulness, but you know it would have come at a cost. Society would not have approved.
No. The biography probably talks about the isolation, the financial struggles they must have faced because of it.
Likely, yeah. Real consequences for defying the norms of the time.
And then, just like that, later the same year, 1938, he goes back to the Soviet Union, abruptly, leaves Lavinia behind.
Yeah, and the why is still murky, isn't it?
Totally unclear. Did he choose to go, or was he summoned, forced?
That ambiguity is such a key mystery in his life story. The sources say it's still debated. Was it his decision, or was he pressured, maybe even taken aback by Soviet agents? It just adds another layer of intrigue.
And his return. Well, things go south pretty fast. He gets caught up in Stalin's purges.
Yeah, arrested, falsely accused of being counter-revolutionary.
Which was happening to so many people then. And he's sentenced to 8 years in the Gulag in Siberia.
Ugh, it's just shocking. Think about it. International inventor mingling with Einstein, suddenly thrown into a brutal, forced labor camp.
Hard to even imagine, especially for listeners who may be less familiar. The purges were this terrifying time of repression, executions. The Gulag was horrific.
It really highlights how indiscriminate those purges were. The contrast between his old life and the Gulag is just staggering. The human cost was immense.
But here's the thing that blows my mind. Even there, in the Gulag, he doesn't stop inventing.
It's incredible, isn't it?
He ends up developing advanced listening devices for the state that imprisoned him.
It's astonishing. It speaks to this powerful drive to create, maybe, or just survival, even under the worst possible conditions.
Yeah.
The biography probably goes into the tech, better microphones, signal boosting, stuff like that. And it mentions specific things like the Baran system and famously the thing.
Ah, yes. The bug they hid in the U.S. ambassador's office in Moscow.
That's the one. A really sophisticated device for its time. Concrete examples of his skills being used, but, for surveillance, not art.
So he's eventually released. He stays in the Soviet Union, works, even teaches again at the Moscow Conservatory, builds new instruments.
Right, he keeps going.
But it sounds like his electronic music wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms back home.
No, the account suggests there was a lot of resistance, skepticism, even rejection of his electronic stuff. At one point, they actually removed his instruments from the conservatory.
Really? Why?
It seems like his experimental approach, what you might call avant-garde, pushing boundaries, just didn't fit with the official artistic ideas of the time in the Soviet Union. A real clash.
How ironic is that? His music is being sort of suppressed in Russia, while back in America, the Theremin is having this weird comeback in Hollywood movies.
It's fascinating, right? How different places value innovation differently. That eerie, otherworldly sound of the Theremin, it was perfect for sci-fi and suspense films.
Like Spellbound?
Spellbound, The Day the Earth Stood Still. It became the sonic shorthand for mystery, for the future, for the unknown, gave it a whole new life.
And its influence didn't stop at the movies, did it? You can hear echoes of it in later music, too.
Oh, definitely. The biography probably points to bands like the Beach Boys.
Ah, Good Vibrations.
That's the one. And Pink Floyd. It shows how this early electronic instrument really did help pave the way for everything that came later in electronic music. Those textures, that experimental vibe, it planted a seed.
So when you look back at his whole life, you can't avoid the tricky parts, the spying, The marriage and the prejudice, the fact his inventions were used for art and for surveillance.
Yeah, it really forces you to think about how complex historical figures can be, especially those caught up in big ideological battles and social shifts.
Right.
You can't just label Theremin easily.
Right.
Visionary inventor, yes, but then there's the espionage, the personal struggles.
Yeah.
It's complicated. You can't just call him a hero or a pawn. He was a product of incredibly turbulent times.
So, wrapping up our deep dive here.
Yeah.
The big takeaways about Léon Theremin really center on his incredible inventiveness, often against the odds.
Absolutely.
His resilience through some truly crazy times. And his story is just tangled up with all these big, complex historical forces.
And if you think about what we can take from his story,
Mm-hmm.
it really shows the power of innovation, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But also the real challenges of navigating prejudice and just the strength people can find when things get incredibly tough. His ability to keep creating, keep contributing, even in the gulag, that's pretty powerful.
Definitely. Okay, so here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about Theremin's journey. His invisible music made audible. What kind of invisible music might be inside you, waiting to come out, even if you have doubts or see obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
His life really shows that amazing things can emerge, even from silence, even from hardship. Maybe it's worth daring to explore your own potential.